The summer of 1968 smelled like burned rubber, high-octane fuel, and confidence. Every stoplight was an invitation. Every dealership was a battlefield. Chevrolet had its 396, Ford had the 390, and the fearsome 428 Cobra Jet waiting in the wings. Chrysler already had the legendary 426 HEMI, an engine so dominant that people whispered its name before races even began. But what almost nobody knows is that the engine quietly humiliating rivals on real streets wasn't the HEMI at all. It was the 383 Magnum. You think you know Mopar history? Not like this. Because hidden behind the headlines, behind the magazine covers, and behind the glory of the HEMI was an engine that countless racers secretly preferred. It cost less, it weighed less, it fit in more cars, and in the hands of the right driver, it could embarrass engines nearly 40 cubic inches larger. So how did the forgotten 383 Magnum become one of Chrysler's greatest weapons, only to be overshadowed by its own family? To understand that, you have to go back to a time when horsepower wasn't just a number. It was a declaration of war. By the mid-1960s, Detroit's horsepower race had become an obsession. Every manufacturer wanted the biggest displacement, the highest compression, and the fastest quarter-mile times. Bigger engines kept appearing almost every year. Customers believed that more cubic inches automatically meant more speed. Marketing departments loved this mentality. Bigger numbers sold cars. Dealerships plastered displacement figures across showroom windows. Advertisements screamed about cubic inches like they were the only metric that mattered. The American buying public ate it up, convinced that a 427 would always beat a 396, and a 440 would dominate a 383. But Chrysler engineers weren't convinced. Deep inside Chrysler's Highland Park Engineering Center, they understood something many buyers didn't. Raw displacement meant nothing if an engine couldn't breathe, rev, or efficiently turn fuel into power. The horsepower wars weren't just about size, they were about science. The RB Series 413 and 426 wedge engines had already proven themselves on NASCAR ovals and drag strips nationwide. But Chrysler's B Series big block had another idea brewing. Introduced in 1959, the 383 cubic inch B engine shared much of its architecture with larger Mopar V8s while using a shorter deck height. That seemingly small design choice made a huge difference. The engine was physically more compact, lighter, and stiffer than its RB counterparts. Its bore measured 4.25 inches, while its stroke came in at just 3.375 inches. That over-square design immediately gave engineers an advantage. The pistons didn't have to travel as far every revolution, reducing average piston speed and allowing the engine to rev more freely. Most people don't realize just how advanced that thinking was. While competitors were stretching strokes to maximize displacement, Chrysler was building an engine designed around modern performance principles that wouldn't become mainstream for another decade. Rather than chasing displacement alone, Chrysler was quietly building an engine that loved RPM, an engine that responded, an engine that breathed. But there was a problem. The early 383 wasn't yet the monster enthusiasts remember today. Throughout the early and mid-1960s, the 383 served honorably in everything from full-size sedans to mid-size performance cars. Horsepower ranged from mild two-barrel versions producing around 270 horses to four-barrel variants making 330 horsepower. Respectable numbers, but not legendary. Competition was getting tougher every season. Chevrolet's 396 L78 was producing 375 gross horsepower. Pontiac's 400 Ram Air programs kept improving. Ford wasn't standing still either, and their big block program was evolving rapidly. Meanwhile, Oldsmobile's 442 kept getting faster. Buick Stage 1 455 was being developed. Even AMC was planning something serious. Chrysler needed something special, something that could compete directly without requiring the cost and complexity of a HEMI. The answer arrived in 1968. Engineers transformed the familiar 383 into the new 383 Magnum. This wasn't just a mild refresh or a marketing exercise. This was a comprehensive performance upgrade that touched nearly every critical component. Compression jumped to 10.01, extracting more energy from every combustion cycle. A far more aggressive hydraulic camshaft increased valve lift and duration, keeping valves open longer and allowing greater airflow at higher engine speeds. Larger 906 cylinder heads dramatically improved airflow, while bigger 2.08-inch intake valves and 1.74-inch exhaust valves helped the engine breathe at higher engine speeds. These were the same castings used on many 440 and early 426 HEMI applications, proven, effective, and capable of supporting serious power. Sitting on top was a high-rise dual-plane intake manifold, feeding a Carter AVS 4-barrel carburetor, capable of flowing roughly 625 cubic feet of air per minute. The intake manifold's taller runners improved mid-range and top-end power delivery while maintaining excellent street manners. Even the exhaust system received attention. Cast iron exhaust manifolds were designed to reduce restriction, though many racers immediately swapped them for headers. Factory ratings listed the engine at 335 horsepower at 5,200 revolutions per minute and 425 pound-feet of torque at just 3,400 revolutions per minute. Those numbers looked almost modest beside the famous 426 HEMI's advertised 425 horsepower, but advertisements don't win street races, torque curves do. And that's where the 383 Magnum became dangerous. Unlike some larger engines that felt lazy below higher RPM, the 383 delivered strong torque almost immediately. Drivers didn't need perfect launches or sky-high revs to make serious speed. The engine simply pulled hard from virtually any RPM, nailed the throttle at 2,000 revolutions per minute, and the car surged forward, matted at 4,000 revolutions per minute, and the acceleration intensified. The power delivery felt linear, predictable, and brutally effective. Mechanics often joked that the 383 felt stronger than its specifications suggested. One longtime Mopar tuner reportedly summed it up perfectly. The dyno says one thing, your backside says another. There were whispers, never confirmed but never quite denied, that Chrysler had intentionally underrated the 383 Magnum's output to avoid insurance penalties and keep it positioned below the more expensive 440 and HEMI options in the corporate hierarchy. Whether true or not, the engine's real-world performance certainly suggested there was more happening than the spec sheet revealed. What happened next surprised even Chrysler. Installed in lighter B-body cars like the Plymouth Road Runner, Dodge Super B, Coronet R/T, and Charger, the 383 suddenly found itself carrying hundreds fewer pounds than many HEMI-equipped machines. Weight matters. Every extra pound affects acceleration, braking, and handling. The cast-iron 383 weighed roughly 620 pounds fully dressed, slightly lighter than the massive HEMI with its larger cylinder heads and more complex valve train. When you factored in the additional structural reinforcements required for HEMI installations, heavier suspension components, beefier K-members, upgraded brakes, the weight advantage became even more pronounced. A typical 383 powered Road Runner might weigh 3,400 pounds ready to race. A comparable HEMI car could easily exceed 3,600 pounds. That 200-pound difference translated directly to quicker acceleration and improved handling characteristics. The lighter nose reduced understeer, improved steering feel, and made the cars more balanced through corners. Combined with lower purchase prices and reduced insurance costs, buyers suddenly realized they could own something nearly as quick without paying HEMI money. The math was compelling. A HEMI Road Runner might cost $4,000 or more. A 383 Magnum version could be had for under $3,200. Insurance on the HEMI could run several $100s annually for young buyers, sometimes making it completely unaffordable. Insurance on the 383 remained relatively reasonable. And then the races began. Road tests from the era regularly recorded quarter-mile times between 14.0 and 14.3 seconds straight off the showroom floor on factory bias ply tires. Trap speeds hovered around 99 to 101 miles per hour. Carcraft, Hot Rod, Motor Trend, and Car and Driver all published similar numbers. Some particularly well-tuned examples dipped into the high 13-second range with nothing more than proper carburetor adjustment and ignition timing optimization. Today, those numbers may not sound extraordinary. In 1968, they were enough to humble almost everything on the street. Consider the competition. A base Chevelle SS 396 with a 325 horsepower L35 engine ran mid to high 14s. Ford's 390 Fairlane struggled to break into the 14s consistently. Even Pontiac's GTO with the base 350 horsepower 400 engine posted similar times. The 383 Magnum was running with and often beating engines that cost significantly more and displaced considerably more cubic inches. Magazine testers frequently commented that traction, not horsepower, was the biggest obstacle. The rear tires simply couldn't hold on. Launch hard and the skinny bias ply tires would erupt into smoke, the rear end stepping sideways as the car fought for grip. It was spectacular to watch, but terrible for elapsed times. One journalist joked that Chrysler should have included replacement tires with every sale. Smart buyers immediately upgraded to wider tires, traction bars, and stiffer rear springs. Suddenly, those mid-14-second times dropped into the low 14s and high 13s with alarming consistency. But there was another surprise waiting. The 383 loved modifications, headers, better ignition timing, slight carburetor tuning, a camshaft upgrade. Suddenly, street racers were finding 380 to over 400 horsepower without touching the bottom end. A set of quality headers alone could free up 20 to 30 horsepower by eliminating the restrictive factory exhaust manifolds. Recurving the distributor for more aggressive timing advance added another 10 to 15 horsepower. A larger carburetor, say a Holley 750 or 800 CFM, transformed top-end breathing. And if you really wanted to get serious, a more aggressive camshaft could push output well beyond 400 horsepower while maintaining reasonable street manners. The forged steel crankshaft used in many high-performance versions proved incredibly durable. Large main journals gave the rotating assembly excellent strength, while thick cylinder walls tolerated overbores of around 0.030 inches without sacrificing reliability. Some builders pushed even further, boring out to 0.060 over and displacing closer to 392 cubic inches. Combined with aftermarket components, these builds produced power levels that rivaled stock HEMIs. The block itself became famous for surviving punishment that destroyed competing engines. Racers regularly pushed 383s well beyond 6,000 revolutions per minute, subjected them to dozens of hard launches every weekend, and ran them at wide-open throttle for extended periods. Most survived without catastrophic failure, but engineers soon encountered another challenge. Higher RPM exposed weaknesses in oil control. Under extended hard acceleration, oil could move away from the pickup during aggressive launches or sustained cornering. Valve springs also became a concern once racers pushed beyond factory redlines, approaching 6,000 revolutions per minute. The factory oil pan, designed primarily for street use, couldn't quite manage oil effectively during hard cornering or sustained acceleration. Oil starvation could lead to bearing failure and catastrophic engine damage. Instead of redesigning the entire engine, builders refined oil pans with improved baffling, upgraded oil pumps, and stronger Drivetrain components. Simple fixes, huge improvements. Aftermarket companies developed specialized road race oil pans with trapdoors and baffles that kept oil around the pickup even during hard cornering. High-volume oil pumps ensured adequate pressure at high RPM. Dual valve springs replaced the factory singles, preventing valve float beyond 6,000 revolutions per minute. Suddenly, weekend racers were spinning 383 Magnums well beyond factory limits with remarkable reliability. You can probably guess what happened next. The drag strips noticed. At tracks across America, the 383 Magnum quietly built an incredible reputation in stock and superstock competition. Cars equipped with the engine consistently produced elapsed times that embarrassed supposedly superior combinations. At events sanctioned by NHRA during the late 1960s, well-driven 383, powered Road Runners and Super Bs repeatedly outperformed expectations because they balanced weight, gearing, and usable torque so effectively. NHRA's classification system tried accounting for displacement and weight, but the 383's efficiency often gave it an advantage. The engine made more power per cubic inch than many competitors expected, and the lighter B-body platform maximized every horsepower. It wasn't always about having the biggest engine. It was about using every horsepower available. Veteran racers often describe the 383 as easier to launch than the HEMI. The torque arrived predictably, throttle response felt immediate, and maintenance costs stayed dramatically lower. The HEMI required constant valve adjustments, specialized knowledge, and expensive parts. Break something, and you might wait weeks for replacements. The 383, parts were everywhere. Any competent mechanic could work on it. Valve adjustments were simple. Tuning was straightforward. That mattered, because broken race cars don't win championships. One Mopar crew chief reportedly laughed after beating several larger engines. They brought cubic inches. We brought balance. Meanwhile, Chrysler's own engineers kept refining the formula. Performance axle ratios ranging from 3.23 to 4.10 allowed customers to tailor acceleration or highway cruising. The 3.23 and 3.55 gears provided excellent highway manners with respectable acceleration. The 3.91 and 4.10 ratios transformed the car into a drag strip weapon, though highway cruising became buzzy and fuel consumption increased dramatically. Heavy-duty cooling systems, larger radiators, and stronger TorqueFlite 727 automatic transmissions ensured the drivetrain could survive repeated abuse. The TorqueFlite became particularly legendary. Its robust construction, smooth shifts, and ability to handle serious power made it a favorite among drag racers. Many competitors envied Chrysler's automatic transmission. It was simply better engineered than most alternatives. The legendary A833 4-speed manual became another favorite. Its close ratio gearing kept the 383 exactly where it wanted to live, between strong mid-range torque and its energetic upper RPM pull. Shift from first to second, and the RPMs dropped perfectly into the power band. Slam third gear, and the engine was right back in its sweet spot. The transmission felt perfectly matched to the engine's characteristics. Everything seemed nearly perfect. Then politics intervened. Insurance companies had started paying attention. Muscle cars filled accident reports. Young buyers were purchasing increasingly powerful machines without the experience to handle them safely. Premiums skyrocketed, sometimes doubling or tripling for performance cars. Some insurance companies refused coverage entirely for HEMI cars or required buyers to be over 25 with spotless driving records. At nearly the same time, federal emissions regulations tightened dramatically. The Clean Air Act and upcoming emissions standards forced manufacturers toward lower compression ratios, leaner carburetor calibrations, and reduced ignition advance. California's emissions standards were even stricter, forcing manufacturers to develop engines that could meet multiple regulatory requirements. High-compression performance engines suddenly became liabilities. The 383 Magnum wasn't immune. For 1971, compression ratios dropped, horsepower ratings declined. The engine that had produced 335 gross horsepower in 1968 was now rated at 300 net horsepower, though measurement standards had changed, making direct comparisons difficult. By the early 1970s, gross horsepower measurements gave way to lower net ratings, making engines appear even weaker on paper. The golden era was ending. Production of the high-performance 383 concluded after the 1971 model year, as Chrysler shifted toward cleaner, lower compression engines. The corporation focused resources on the 340 small block and the 440 big block, leaving the 383 behind. The engine that had quietly terrified rivals disappeared almost overnight. But here's the fascinating part. Its reputation only grew stronger. Collectors eventually realized the 383 Magnum occupied a unique place in Mopar history. Unlike the ultra-expensive HEMI, thousands of enthusiasts had actually owned and raced these engines. They carried memories of Friday night drag races, weekend wrenching sessions, and unexpected victories against supposedly unbeatable competitors. These weren't trailer queens or museum pieces. They were real cars that real people drove hard and loved deeply. Restorers discovered another advantage. Replacement parts remained relatively available. The engine's straightforward wedge head design proved easier and cheaper to rebuild than the more exotic HEMI. You didn't need specialized tools or rare knowledge. A competent home mechanic with a factory service manual could completely rebuild a 383 in their garage. Performance aftermarket companies embraced it as well. Modern aluminum cylinder heads, hydraulic roller camshafts, forged rotating assemblies, electronic ignition systems, and improved intake manifolds have pushed naturally aspirated 383 builds well beyond 500 horsepower while retaining impressive street manners. Companies like Edelbrock, Comp Cams, Eagle, and others developed comprehensive product lines supporting 383 builds. Modern technology, CNC-ported heads, computer-designed camshaft profiles, improved metallurgy, extracted performance the original engineers could only dream about. Some carefully engineered combinations now approach 600 horsepower without forced induction. That's remarkable for an engine architecture whose roots stretch back to the 1950s. Add a turbocharger or supercharger, and the sky becomes the limit. Well-built 383s have exceeded 1,000 horsepower in racing applications, proving the basic architecture's incredible strength. Even today, experienced Mopar builders often recommend the 383 for enthusiasts wanting responsive street performance instead of chasing maximum displacement. Why? Because the original philosophy still works. A lighter rotating assembly, a short 3.375-inch stroke, excellent breathing potential. The same characteristics that shocked competitors over 50 years ago continue delivering exciting performance today. Meanwhile, surviving original 383 Magnum-equipped Road Runners, Chargers, Super Bs, and Coronets have become increasingly desirable among collectors. While genuine HEMI cars often command prices well into six figures, or even beyond, 383 Magnum examples offer much of the driving excitement at a fraction of the cost. A numbers-matching HEMI Road Runner might sell for $200,000 or more. A comparable 383 Magnum car could be $40,000 to $70,000, depending on condition and documentation. Both deliver thrilling performance. Both turn heads. But one doesn't require a second mortgage. Many enthusiasts would argue they're actually more enjoyable. They're easier to drive, easier to maintain, and somehow more honest. Because they never relied on hype, they simply performed. That's why so many longtime Mopar fans smile when someone dismisses the 383 as just another big block. They know better. They remember the stoplight races. They remember watching heavier, more expensive cars disappear in the rearview mirror. They remember an engine that wasn't supposed to win, yet somehow kept doing exactly that. They remember the sound, that distinctive Mopar rumble at idle, the aggressive bark under acceleration, the mechanical symphony at wide-open throttle. They remember the feeling, that instant throttle response, the relentless pull through the gears, the satisfaction of perfect shifts. In the end, the 383 Magnum never needed to be the biggest engine Chrysler built. It only needed to be one of the smartest. Its combination of compact dimensions, a 4.25-inch bore, 3.375-inch stroke, 10.01 compression, 335 horsepower, and a mountain of usable torque created one of the most balanced muscle car engines of its era. It proved that engineering often beats ego, that efficiency can outperform excess, and that sometimes the greatest legends are the ones history almost forgets. The 383 Magnum represents something increasingly rare in automotive history, an engine designed around principles rather than marketing. While others chased cubic inches and horsepower numbers, Chrysler's engineers focused on creating an engine that simply worked brilliantly. They succeeded, and for those who know, who remember, who've experienced that particular brand of Mopar magic, the 383 Magnum will always hold a special place, not as the biggest, not as the most expensive, but as one of the best,